Warning, I want to preface this video with a quick disclaimer. While I've been overwhelmingly positive in my videos for Pokemon Legends Arceus so far, you're about to hear me say a lot of negative assumptions based on my experiences with Pokemon in the past. This is a video about fears after all, so please understand from where and why they exist. You have been warned. It may be hard to fathom, but Pokemon Legends Arceus is right around the corner. That's very exciting, yet at the same time, a feeling of uncertainty still fills the air regarding the game's overall quality. Many fears are very justified, and some not so much. So let's dive into what we should or shouldn't be scared of when it comes to Pokemon Legends Arceus. Let's start with what we should be scared of, so we can end on a more positive note later. Number 1 on the list of things we should be scared about is the fact that GameFreak are the developers for Pokemon Legends. This is a very broad fear to start the list on, but I know I need to get it out of the way, since most other things to fear stem from this fact. GameFreak hasn't shown us a competent game on the Switch yet, and fans are rightfully scared about how they might soil anything the concept of Pokemon Legends Arceus has to offer. If you know how GameFreak has been operating the last few years, it actually explains a lot. GameFreak has admitted that Pokemon has been in the back seat to other games they've been trying to make. That's right. When people accuse GameFreak of not caring about Pokemon anymore, they're actually correct. GameFreak sets themselves up into 3 teams. Team 1, Team 2, and the R&D division. Team 1's work is the priority of the divisions at all times. But surely that's Pokemon development, you might think. Unfortunately, you'd be incorrect. Team 1 focuses specifically on the basis of branching out from the Pokemon franchise. Little Town Hero took priority over Sword and Shield. Let that sink in for a bit.
Look at this, development in Pokemon games. Psych, that's actually the town developers, sorry.
Little Town Hero developers, you mean?
Team B ended up developing Sword and Shield, with Omori as director, of course, and Hiroyuki Tani as the director for Sword and Shield's DLC pack. This was a lot of exposition, basically for me to say that, yes, it is okay and very rational of every single one of you to be scared that GameFreak is developing Pokemon Legends Arceus. I and many others are really hoping this is a huge reform for the company as they merged into Nintendo's headquarters recently, but when comparing the current footage of Legends to the love and care put into New Pokemon Snap by Bandai Namco, it becomes clear that there's a lot to worry about still. So that brings us to number 2 of things to fear with Pokemon Legends Arceus. A lack of features and things to do in the game. I've mentioned before that GameFreak has struggled with implementing fun activities in their games since they began developing 3D titles. Side quests are almost non-existent, and we haven't seen fun side game content like Pokemon contests or the Unova Pokemon film and customization studios. Battle Frontiers took a departure for the insanely boring Battle Tower, and Dynamax Adventures turned out to be a glorified menu instead of the vast, huge underworld that we were promised we could, and I quote, explore. This is all alarming. How can we possibly expect a feature-filled game like Breath of the Wild when the developers have never put worthwhile features in their 3D titles? The third thing to be scared about is the lack of meaningful interaction with our Pokemon. The most burning questions I have with Pokemon Legends Arceus are along the lines of, can my Pokemon travel alongside me outside of their Pokeball? If so, will they keep up or pop in and out like Sword and Shield? Will I actually feel like I'm traveling with my companions this time, or trying to make them bite the dust like Sword and Shield? Or will I feel disconnected from them entirely because I can't see them traveling next to my player character throughout the game? Which is especially bad since the anime literally flaunts this in front of my face on a constant basis. Can I pet them? Can I ride them? Climb with them? Glide with them? Surf on them? Swim with them? Solve puzzles with them? Remove obstacles with them? Can they play with each other like in Pokemon Camp? All this and more have me super worried because realistically, all these things should be staples in the series by now, but the franchise has been abandoned with a company who doesn't even care about it anymore. I'm really stretching to hold out hope that GameFreak delivers us a meaningful experience with our partners. Speaking of our partners, the fourth thing we have to be scared about is the size scaling for Pokemon. GameFreak still has yet to make a Pokemon game where the Pokemon are sized properly. Even Pokemon Let's Go, which made monsters like Gyarados and Onix larger than the player character like they're supposed to be, it still didn't scale them up all the way. If we compare to Pokemon Colosseum, Gale of Darkness, and Battle Revolution, they still look like shrimp. And then, of course, we all know what Sword and Shield did. It made large Pokemon smaller than the player character, which is still the biggest crime GameFreak has ever committed. Will we see GameFreak actually do their own creations justice for once in their lives? We'll see. Number 5 is the fear that Pokemon Legends Arceus won't have any worthwhile long-term activities, and will be a short experience as such. What I mean is, Breath of the Wild has a slew of activities for the player besides the main objective. Partake in side quests, cook useful food items, solve shrine puzzles, solve environmental puzzles, experiment with different weapons and physics, tame horses, gather gear that varies gameplay, customize your character, build a house, and so much more. We can even look at an old Pokemon game for reference. Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. In those games, even once you've finished off the Elite Four, you can explore a new region and gain 8 more badges, participate in the bug catching contests, communicate through calls with all the NPCs, effectively keeping the world alive and thriving, discover more new Pokemon and even play around with traveling alongside different ones, listen to the radio, experiment with the day, night, and weekday mechanic to find new things, explore dungeons for areas you couldn't previously reach, fight a secret boss, and, in Heart Gold Soul Silver, re-challenge all gym leaders as well as play a slew of minigames in the new Pokeathlon area. And that's just most of what I could think of right off the bat. What can we do in Sword and Shield? Partake in boring Dynamax Den raid battles? Play through the boring battle tower? And, that's pretty much it. I guess you can complete the Pokedex, Shiny Hunt, and Breed, but again, tedious and boring. Plus, you could do all those things in past games anyways. And they had more Pokemon. Oh, and that's right. How could I forget? You can pay another $30 to have 2 more wild areas to explore, with some glorified legendary fetch quests that were decent at best, and play the Gets Boring Fast mode Dynamax Adventures. Wait, was all this really worth $90? I'd say not. Anyways, I'm really hoping Pokemon Legends Arceus has a slew of quests, mechanics, and gameplay varieties to play around with for years. But I'm not expecting it to. Hence, this being a big fear on this list. Which brings me to number 6 on things to fear for Pokemon Legends. That this will be a small, empty, lifeless world. From what we've seen in the trailer so far, the world of Pokemon Legends looks pretty small and samey. And as Kayla Capsule said in her map breakdown video,
this game might not be as big as people hope.
On top of this, there's a big chance the world will be pretty barren. For one, we don't know what the draw distance actually will be in the final product, and if it's anything like Sword and Shield, we won't see anything in the distance unless it's 2 feet ahead of us. We also might not have any more towns or villages to discover other than the one we start out in. There may be 0 NPCs in the overworld outside the village. Pokemon might just be dropped in random spots again like in Sword and Shield, and be completely detached from the environment they're in as well as the other Pokemon around them. NPCs might be one-dimensional and not have any sort of AI, even as primitive as Majora's Mask by now. If GameFreak games to date are our template, then they'll all be one-line ponies who have nothing of real substance to say or do. The penultimate fear I have, though, is camera control. Please, GameFreak, let us move the camera up and down more than 2 centimeters, and don't limit our camera control anytime we reach an indoor area. Finally, my final fear that we need to talk about is a possible awful presentation in the game. What do I mean by this? I mean, whether the story is good or not, I hope GameFreak doesn't bloat their coding again and have chugging cutscenes with characters that move as if they exist in a 2-dimensional space, and cycle over the same canned animation every time they do or say something. Please, animate clapping. Animate scenes and don't fade to black. Please, don't rotate 3D models on an axis without making them look natural as they do so. Please, if you're gonna have characters singing, put a voice in there. Please, please, develop something competent this time around, GameFreak. Alright, I've got all that out of my system, and wow, I feel so much better now. On that note, before we dive into the things we don't need to fear, I want to thank you all for sticking with me through that very dark and scary place we just went through together. If you are enjoying the video so far, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help out way more than you know. Alright, rant over. Now let's talk about the things we don't need to fear. God, I feel so much better already. The battle system. I think it's very clear by now that Pokemon battles are about to become very exciting, with the new active time battle system and supposedly seamless transition in the overworld. It's exciting that our player character's life is on the line, and that we even have to dodge roll sometimes to avoid demolition. The second thing we don't need to fear is clever inclusion of boss Pokemon, and the importance they will serve. One of my subscribers, Hen, stated that boss Pokemon might even be the Pokemon we beat to unlock features such as riding, climbing, and gliding. This is a very possible scenario and is most likely the case, although I hope we get complete control over which Pokemon we use for these functions. Options are always better. Regardless, I have no doubt boss battles will be tense, with our character's own life being in danger, and that will unlock great things from defeating them. The third thing we don't need to worry about is the frame rate issues of the Pokemon in the overworld. If anything, we should be worried GameFreak changes their approach and does pop-in instead, because the frame rates is a sign that this is early footage of them implementing billboarding to keep a better draw distance. I explained billboarding in my final analysis before E3 video, so feel free to watch that afterwards to get the inside scoop of what I'm talking about here. The fourth thing we don't need to worry about is the difficulty. The player character taking damage mixed with an ATB system for fights is already a huge step up in terms of multifaceted game design. I don't think I really need to explain this further. We also don't need to worry about the story itself. Sure, GameFreak storytelling has never been particularly good, but this is a game being made to flesh out rich lore, which is something Pokemon has always excelled at, especially in Gens 2 and 4. With this being a Gen 4 project, I have little doubt they won't fail us here. Like I said in the fears section, it's more so the presentation of the story we should worry about. Number 6 is how many Pokemon will be in the game. We shouldn't even care. If they have less Pokemon in Legends but the game is amazing, then it doesn't matter how many Pokemon are in. We finally got a great game. If there are more Pokemon in it though, I don't think anyone will complain, so it's a win-win. I don't think anyone actually fears what the Pokemon count will be here, but in case you do, just don't worry about it, is all I'm trying to say. There's way more to focus on here. Finally, we need not worry about the art style and music. The art style is gorgeous, like a watercolor painting, and allows a feeling of immersion in a fictional world I don't think Pokemon has ever had in its main series games. On top of that, The music we've heard so far is beautiful. I've analyzed all the tracks so far in a video already, and I can't wait to hear more. But what are your fears on Pokemon Legends Arceus, and what do you think people fear irrationally? Let me know down in the comments. I'll be streaming the Pokemon Presents this Wednesday, so I look forward to you all joining me there. Until then though, peace